John Gormley. Good to have you here and wherever we find you today. By the way, wherever we find you is going to be particularly appropriate top of the hour. We're going to check in with the new Saskatchewan Wanderer. This is the 21-year-old Regina guy who, what a great gig. It's a vehicle, laptop, smartphone. He'll be tweeting, he'll be Facebooking as he wanders Saskatchewan. So Andrew Konoff's going to be here. But more than talking to Andrew, we're going to talk to you. Where should Andrew be wandering in Saskatchewan this summer? You know, we tend to forget about this, and I'm on this tear all the time. If you took a strip of land 50 miles wide by 200 miles long, that's 10,000 square miles, right? Except for that 10,000 square miles, we are the size of Texas in this province. Well, okay, we have 23.5 million fewer people than Texas does, but we have a huge landmass, and there are many, many countries in the world that are not a quarter of the size of Saskatchewan, entire nations. So when you wander Saskatchewan, you've got a lot of real estate to cover and a bunch of hidden gems that nobody knows about except you. So Andrew Konoff here, top of the hour. Where should the Saskatchewan Wanderer wander? Your advice to him coming up. Okay, Larry Hubick, the, what do I say in my book? Larry Hubick, whose politics inclined toward Marxist, radical left-wing leader of the Saskatchewan Federation of Labour, is a guy who started the boycotts of this show. He blocked me on Facebook. I mean, I said, look, this weekend's project, low in my job jars a few weeks ago, because I had a bunch of work to do. By the end of the weekend, I'm going to follow Larry Hubick and then count how long it takes before he blocks me. So I follow him on Twitter, and then he blocks me because he doesn't want me keeping an eye on him. So listeners are always sending me stuff. Hubick tweets. Ready for this? Brad Wall threatens to fire teachers over negotiations. Wow. Now, first of all, that's an unfair labor practice. And secondly, it shows a hard-heartedness and a contempt for collective bargaining and valid concerns that's like out of the third world, right? Brad Wall threatens to fire teachers over negotiations. And he links a CTV story. So I thought, Premier Wall? Guy I've known Wall since he was in high school. Firing people over negotiations? I better read this story. Headline: higher wages could lead to teacher layoffs. Wall. Saskatchewan's premier is cautioning teachers against making wage comparisons, especially with Alberta. Alberta's teachers are in the middle of a 5-year contract that includes a 4.4% wage hike in September. But Brad Wall says that generous contract has Alberta teachers facing massive layoffs. He notes some school divisions are complaining they have to cut positions so they can pay teachers their raise. About 12,000 Saskatchewan teachers stay doing they walk out. Well, Wall didn't use the number. The number 700 is in play in southern Alberta right now. Up to 700 teacher layoffs. And I was reading that recently in Alberta. And the reason they're laying off teachers is the global budget. They just can't afford it. So, yes, everybody's making more money, but we're going to have fewer teachers. So we'll raise classroom sizes. Teachers will get their raise because you can't unwind the raise. You can just let teachers go. That's happening in Alberta. And if you get out of Saskatchewan much, you'll know that. So Brad Wall says, be careful if you compare yourselves to Alberta because they're laying teachers off. Fair enough. That's what Larry Hubick construes as Brad Wall threatens to fire teachers over negotiations. My goodness. Now, Larry Hubick, just a spring ago, was the nominator for Dwayne Lingenfelter at the NDP convention to keep on as leader. Larry is an active New Democrat, and he works for them, he parties with them, he does all the stuff. Fine. And he's a proxy, he campaigns, he spends your union dues on NDP campaigns. But, you see, you can have great, strong, vigorous opinions. Even like Stephen Whitworth, who I was just going toe-to-toe with from Prairie Dog. Whitworth called you a bunch of dumb F rednecks because 56% of Saskatchewan votes Conservative, and provincially, 60% of people are voting Sask Party. So, the left call you names and stuff, and that's fine. But Whitworth doesn't make stuff up, typically. He just calls names. So here's Hubick, who's the hero of the left. Brad Wall threatens to fire teachers over negotiations. Did you read that into a story that if you compare yourself to Alberta and want to be paid like Alberta, you could find a situation where there are layoffs being faced? I didn't read fire into that. Now, it is common on the political left, when they disagree with you, to say, remember a young caller phoned me up last week, you're lying, you're lying. Well, no, lying imports a mental element. To lie, you must have the intent to deliberately deceive. So I'm always really careful when I say someone's lying. Lots of people I know are wrong, or I disagree with their opinions, but they're not lying. They just have a different opinion than I do. So Larry Hubick is one of two things. He either didn't understand very well the story that he was reading, and Larry, I think that's a sign we need better teachers, or maybe you did in the past. You have to read. Remember English comprehension? You read, and what did you learn from this, Larry? What did you learn from this story you just read? So maybe Larry has some comprehension deficits in his learning. But I don't, is he lying when he says this? And again, I can't go in his heart to ascertain the motive. You see, that he's deliberately misleading you. So I will not call Larry Hubick a liar. After this post, I will call him a fool, but not a liar. 1-877-332-8255. Anything you want to talk about today? You know what I'm really curious about? But so much has been talked about in this federal election with the NDP and these seats, and the 5 McGill students, and the 19-year-old from Sherbrooke. I mean, that's all, but that's kind of like the color stuff. That's fun. These MPs might provide some entertainment, some value, but there have always been MPs who get elected where everybody didn't think they were going to pull it off, and they did. And again, the parties, party discipline being what it is, you might get a little entertainment. I think the bigger issue is what's going to happen now in Canada. I don't know what Stephen Harper's going to do. Now, Harper did say the day after the election, and I thought this was interesting, Canadians don't like surprises. So he seemed to be ruling out, and when you say that, you sort of rule out the erratic policy setting. For example, the hidden agenda stuff. You gave me a majority. Smithers, call out the hounds. I'm changing Canada now. I have a majority. I'm going to change the flag. I'm going to change the name of the country. So, I think Harper's pretty well ruled out surprises. So the best test you've got to use on Harper is the Tory Blue Book. Because he said, here's my promise, my set of promises, and that's what you're going to keep. He also has made it very clear, and these are in the Blue Book, that a number of issues that dragged, like the Get Tough on Crime bills, there were many, would likely be put in one big omnibus bill to be moved and passed. Well, you can't pass it in 100 days, but you can certainly move on it by initiating it, getting it into committee in the first 100 days. So there will be an omnibus Get Tough on Crime bill. The long gun registry will be eased out. It will no longer be a criminal offense not to register your long gun. Now, whether the registry winds up or the criminal sanctions are done, does it stay as a voluntary registry? I don't know how it's going to look. You know more about the gun registry than I do, but it's done. The Canadian Wheat Board, which, again, under threat of penalty jail punishment, is the monopoly sales agency for your wheat, oats, and barley. It's still going to exist, but you don't, under fear of legal threat, have to use the Wheat Board. So there will be a choice aspect introduced in marketing, and that's a good thing, too. Taxpayer-paid subsidies to political parties. Every political party, every single year, gets $1.75 for every vote it got in the last election. So you and I pay millions of dollars to the political parties. You know the Bloc Québécois raised on its own last year, aside from its subsidy, because it gets about 1.5 million votes usually, not anymore. So the Bloc, I think we're in the range of about $4 million every year they got from us because of their votes. Do you know how much they raised independently? $250,000. These guys couldn't even have a big fundraising dinner and pull off. $250,000 for a party with 47 MPs. Well, now, once the taxpayer subsidies are gone and so the Bloc is going to be forced to actually go out and raise its own money from its own supporters. The Bloc Québécois, I argue, will soon be expected to be in bankruptcy. The Liberals will also take a huge hit because the Liberals have been underperforming in their ability to raise money. Now, it is often said, well, once you end the subsidy, it'll allow big businesses and big unions. No, right now, big businesses and big unions aren't allowed to contribute to parties. The only donations parties can receive are from individuals, and they're capped at $1,100 a year. So I think what you're going to see is the parties having to go out into the marketplace of ideas and sell themselves. Hey, I'm a New Democrat. Here's what I believe. Open your checkbook and give me money. I'm a Tory. Here's what I believe. Open your checkbook, give me money. I'm a Greenie. And then see what the parties can come up with. The Tories were raising $20 million that way. Far more than any of the other parties. Why? Well, I guess if we look to Stephen Whitworth, dumb F rednecks, give the Tories money. 56% of all these hicks in Saskatchewan who vote Conservative, idiots, he called them, but there are idiots everywhere in Canada. So he says, stay in Saskatchewan. Your stupid Conservative voting co-workers, friend, family, customers, clients, other toxic influences, you can mostly ignore, right, Stephen Whitworth? Nothing like a bit of political venting. 1-877-332-8255. Anything you want to talk about today, it's the week's ultimate open line session. And by the way, did the teachers' strike move you to be more or less supportive of the teachers? That and more coming up here on News Talk Radio.